This is Revolutionizing Recruitment with Kathleen Duffy, the art of attracting, acquiring, and retaining talent. Here's Kathleen.
So my guest this week is Ernie Dianastasis. Ernie is the founder and CEO of the Precisionists, a global administrative service and IT company with a unique mission to employ 10,000 neurodiverse professionals over the next several years, create meaningful careers for people with disabilities, and deliver world-class service to customers. With his extensive experience and dedication to making a positive impact in the community, Ernie is a true leader and advocate for neurodiverse professionals. And we're honored to have him as our guest today as he shares his insights and experience with us. Ernie, welcome to the podcast.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
So Ernie, you have had an amazing journey that led you to starting the Precisionists. Can you tell us about that journey?
Happy to. It's really interesting how I got into this. For many years, was responsible for a large component of an IT services company, helped build it over the course of several years, and had a very successful business going, and thought I was going to really finish out my career doing that. And a remarkable thing happened in 2013. I got a call from, at the time, the governor of Delaware. He was in his first term. His name's Jack Markell. Great guy, and he was in his first term. And what was interesting is he was picked by the other 49 governors. They do this every year, all the governors. They pick one of the 50 governors to be head of the National Governors Association, which they automatically belong to when they're elected. And it's a real honor to be picked. It's a one-year term. And other than having extra work to do, the real perk behind it is that you get to pick, the governor gets to pick the platform that they're all going to work on for a year. And Governor Markell picked employing people with disabilities for a better bottom line. And he did that in 2013, so it was very forward-thinking. And he wanted to not only do this on a national level, but he wanted to also show some progress and accomplishment in his home state. So he gave me a call because he had read about a guy. At the time, I was running a large IT services business, but he read about a guy in Copenhagen, Denmark. He read about him in the New York Times. And when this gentleman from Denmark found out his son was on the autism spectrum at the age of 3 or so, just like every other set of parents or parent out there, the immediate thought went through their minds, what's going to happen when our son is an adult and we're no longer around to help him? This guy decided to do something about it, and he started a new business, quit his job, started a new business to help find, assess, train, and employ autistic adults into tech jobs. And this was back in 2005, 2006 he was doing this. So he was way ahead of the curve. And he had some success with it by 2012 or so. And the New York Times caught wind of it, and they wrote up his story. And the governor read the story. So he was like, the light bulb went off immediately. And he said, this is exactly what I'm trying to do with the National Governors Association. So he basically got a hold of me and he said, listen, I have an idea. I read about this guy. He's thinking of taking his model across the world. And I called him and I invited him to come to Delaware. And I'd like you to come to this meeting. He said, I have no idea where it'll go, but I just think there's some potential synergy there. Well, you don't turn down an invitation from the governor to come to a meeting.
Right.
So I went. And by the way, Delaware's a small place. Everybody gets to know everybody. You even get to know, you run into the governor at the grocery store, believe it or not. It's like a small town. So I knew him, and he called me and discussed this. And then I went to this meeting and met the gentleman from Denmark. I was so impressed with the things he was doing and the innovations he had come up with that a month later, I jumped on a plane. I went over to Copenhagen to see this. And I wanted to really see what he was doing and kind of peel the onion back and make sure it was real. Well, it was. And about 6 months later, the gentleman from Denmark, his name is Torkild Sanna, and his wife and their son Lars, who's autistic, they moved to the States, and he opened up a nonprofit subsidiary of his Danish company in Delaware. And I immediately invited him in to my IT business to try and pilot some of the concepts that he had been working on. And within a year, we stood up about 35 to 40 IT positions, software engineering, software testing, and had the individuals working through on integrated teams with neurotypical people. Then took a step back and said, let's see how this works. And the performance was off the chart, fantastic. So much so that's when the light bulb went off for me. And I said, I know what I want to do the last 20 years of my career. I'm going to cash out of the current venture, use the proceeds to self-fund a brand new company called the Precisionists, and we're going to create 10,000 neurodiverse careers, over the next few decades. That's how it came to be.
Wow, what an amazing story. And I think it is interesting, the vision that people had before their time. So let's set the stage a little bit. So, who is a neurodiverse professional?
Great question. A neurodiverse, or sometimes they're called neurodiverse, sometimes they're called neurodivergent. There are estimated to be over 30 million Americans who are neurodiverse. And that includes autism, which probably is somewhere between 7 to 8 million of that 30 million, but lots of other things as well. Obsessive compulsive disorder, ADHD, ADD, Tourette's syndrome, and a number of other things that fall under the umbrella of neurodiversity. But the key thing is that when someone is neurodiverse, one of the challenges they face is the ability to interact socially and or emotionally in terms of then being able to sustain employment or long-lasting relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically because of those challenges, it's estimated that individuals that are who are neurodiverse, the under or unemployment numbers are somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 80%, which is staggering.
Yes, yes. Well, and that kind of drives us to the economy that we're in right now, and organizations continue to be challenged to hire talented workers. And certainly disabled employees have many, many talents and strengths that are going to help these organizations not only succeed, but have a competitive advantage, right? So what are some of the strengths that a neurodiverse professional would bring to a company?
Yeah, there's so many, but just some of the big ones are attention to detail, pattern recognition capability, the ability to find a defect in a large aggregation of data, accuracy, precision, just and also very innovative. People don't really understand or realize that oftentimes neurodiverse individuals are incredibly innovative because in many ways they're coming at a challenge or a business issue or anything, a complex problem with a unique perspective in terms of how their brain processes it and then comes up with solutions to solve the problem. And that's exciting because what it means is companies can be so much better if they have a combination of neurodiverse and neurotypical individuals. It's been documented and proven that the most innovative companies are the ones that actually have that diverse number of individuals who are bringing different and unique perspectives to the business challenges.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So let's think about these employers right now, and let's educate them, right? So, what can employers do to really assist a neurodiverse candidate? When they're trying to navigate the hiring process.
Yeah, so that's exactly why we formed the company. It's what the Precisionist does, is that we're experts in two things. One, getting the candidates who up to now have been 75 to 80% under or unemployed workforce ready from a workforce development perspective. And I can talk a little bit about how we do that. And the second key thing we do really well is how we work with major companies that we work with to prepare them for successful outcomes on projects that utilize neurodiverse talent. And that includes a whole series of steps and things we do to prepare those organizations as well. So it's preparing the candidates, it's preparing the corporations, and then having us be the orchestrator or conductor of that symphony.
And I think there's many pools of untapped talent, right? And the key thing is to get them workforce ready. So yeah, I'd love to know more about what you're doing in that area.
Yeah, so it's really interesting that there's been a reason why the underemployment and the unemployment numbers have been so high. It's really two things. One, interviews, traditional HR interviews, are a career killer for someone who's neurodiverse. And only because they may be uncomfortable, or they may fidget, or they may not look the interviewer in the eye, or not be able to find the right words to describe their capability. And yet, that has absolutely no bearing whatsoever as to whether somebody can be a terrific software engineer or cybersecurity specialist or data analytics person. There's no correlation to how polished they are and how they make small talk to an HR interviewer. So we don't do interviews. We invite candidates in who hear about us, and we have workshops, and we give the candidates a project to do instead of a formal HR interview. Our talent acquisition folks are trained to watch how the individual does the project and begin to get insight into what their strengths are. And Kathleen, this is the key here. This is all about figuring out a person's strengths, not dwelling or focusing on their challenges. And because everybody, whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse, are good at what they like, and they like what they're good at. It's pretty simple when you really boil it down, but you'd be amazed at how seldomly these individuals have a chance to tap into what their real gifts are because the system hasn't allowed them to do that.
Well, and it's interesting. I've had this conversation a lot with my podcast guests, and it doesn't matter who the candidate is. Quite often, as employers, we're not focused on these people's strengths, and we talk about being in their their zone, their love zone of when time passes that they don't even realize that they're working. So I guess even thinking as I'm thinking about your response, I'm thinking, duh, this is just like any other candidate that you would be interviewing.
That's right. Yeah, it really is. But the second item that is also contributes to the high under and unemployment is a little more subtle than the interview. And that is, for years and years, lots of very good organizations who support people with disabilities have tried really hard to successfully create careers for this population, but it hasn't worked well. And there's a reason for that. Corporations that are very fast moving, very complex, very large, the org chart's changing constantly. People are moving. Project deadlines are tight. There's a lot of pressure. There's all kinds of things that are going on. And you can't just take someone who's neurodiverse and plop them into an environment and expect them to be successful. This is where our business expertise from our earlier careers pays off so well here, because we can go into a very complex, fast-moving organization. We understand technology, we understand project management, metrics, all the things that go into successfully completing work in large corporations. And we can talk the language, we can assess and work on defining the projects and the activity that will align well with the strengths of the neurodiverse talent. And then we put contracts together with our customers, and we perform the work using a significant portion of the workforce being neurodiverse talent. So our business knowledge and going in and understanding how to architect this so that it's aligned well for success for neurodiversity is the other part of the equation that makes this work.
Mhm. So I'm was thrilled to hear a few years ago that you opened an innovation and technology center here in Phoenix, where I'm located, with again another commitment to provide jobs for adults with autism and other disabilities over the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years. So you're a couple years into that here in the Valley. How is all of that going?
Well, it's been going really, really well. Phoenix is one of our fastest growing operations in the Precisionists, and I give a lot of credit to that success in Phoenix to a well-known, lovable person named Denise Resnick, who helped
Yeah.
start SARC 20 years ago, and more recently, really conceived and founded First Place, which is for residential support for neurodiversity. And she's really a big part of why we decided to come to Phoenix, was that the Valley is really a wonderful community that's very autism friendly. And
Mhm.
we just saw it as a great market to be in. And it's absolutely been the case.
Yeah, Denise is a very special lady, and you talk about First Place and the Transition Academy, and my nephew was in the first class of the First Place Transition Academy, and it was really a game changer for him, but it still brought some challenges along the way for him, and you talked about this at the beginning. So my nephew doesn't visibly present as having autism, and so quite often people don't understand the challenges that he has with communication. He's really, really good about going along with the conversation and giving the impression that he understands that, you know, what somebody is telling him, especially a supervisor. And that goes on even when he doesn't understand it. And so his mom was telling me that this is called masking, and from what I understand, it's quite exhausting for someone like my nephew who's on this spectrum, because he thinks he understands. But what the problem is in the work environment, again, he thinks he's doing the job correctly. And then the coworkers and supervisors get real frustrated with him. So he's left really confused. So, as you're talking about preparing these major employers, I'm curious about, this communication breakdown. Is it due to the supervisor's lack of understanding how to work with that individual on the autism spectrum? And if that's the case, what are some of the tools that you're doing to help these employers to be better at that communication breakdown, or ensure it doesn't break down? I guess is a better way to say that.
Right. Yeah. And you hit on something that's really big, and that the masking is an incredible stress. It creates tremendous amount of anxiety and stress for individuals who are neurodiverse. And what we do that really, the biggest thing we do that really makes a huge impact in helping with this is every project that we do for our customers includes a project lead from the Precisionists, from TPI, as we're often called, and that project lead plays two roles. They're very strong business practitioners in either IT or business services, so they can speak the language and work closely with the customers that we're doing the work for. But they're also well versed and trained in neurodiversity. They're the HR managers for our resources. And so that support, that ability to fill the gaps or bridge the gap of communications, is done by that key project lead coach that we provide on every project that we do. And that is one of the things that brings the risk down and helps create the successful outcomes for the neurodiverse employee.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, hang on, Ernie. We have to stop here. But coming up in the second part of my conversation with Ernie Dianastasis, the founder of the Precisionists, Ernie talks about the progress they're making in achieving a goal of creating 10,000 jobs over the next decade.
We're well on our way to our goal now. We're approaching 300, which we should be at by mid-year. And then but the thing that's happened is that the growth now is really accelerating. We added over 100 people in 2022, and we're on that same kind of a growth path this year. It's actually even faster. So we're going to start to chip away at that goal, and I think we're well on our way as we continue to take this across the country.
This has been Revolutionizing Recruitment with Kathleen Duffy. To connect with Kathleen or to learn more about recruitment research, go to duffygroup.com.